My name is Amicabilitaria Femina, which means social woman. I have been given the special assignment of talking to you about the Roman Colosseum. Venerable Bede was a monk at a monastery. He quoted a prophecy of Anglo-Saxon pilgrims.
Quando stabit Colosseus, stabut et Roma. Quando cadet Colosseus, cadet et Roma. Quando cadet Roma, cadet et mundus.
While the Colosseum stands, Rome shall stand. When the Colosseum falls, Rome shall fall. When Rome falls, the world shall fall. Abyssus. Forgive me, you don't speak Latin. Abyssus means roughly the same as hello in your language. I will also tell you that abyssus is a general greeting with the approximate meaning of
Grüß Gott in German, bonjour in French, buongiorno in Italian, ni hao in Chinese, Mugundu Umaga in Tagalog, and konnichiwa in Japanese.
The Colosseum was originally known as the Flavian Amphitheater.
Amphitheatrum Flavium.
And it is a huge elliptical edifice built in the center of the city of what is still known as Rome, Italy. It is considered one of the greatest works of Roman architecture and engineering, with construction started somewhere between 70 and 72 AD by Emperor Vespasian,
Titus Flavius Vespasianus.
The ninth emperor, completed in 80 AD by his son.
Titus Flavius Vespasianus.
Will you please stop that?
Sorry.
Okay. The 10th Roman emperor,
Who was the Roman emperor?
Titus Flavius Vespasius.
Oh, that's right. Sorry again.
You see, father and son have the same full name. The father is now known as Vespasian, and the son is known as Titus, even though he could have been called Titus Flavius Vespasian II. The Colosseum is perhaps one of the most striking reminders of just how powerful and horrific it once was. Gladiators fought to the death while both men and beasts were mauled brutally here. Lions 3, Christians nothing! Christians worshipped here, perhaps praying for toothless lions. Groups found safety inside its boundaries. Others found needful building supplies within its walls. My many great-grandchildren acquired several delightful columns from the Colosseum. Which they used for a post-prom party in the year 1010. The party itself wasn't so great, but after all, it was 1,000 years ago, and they had limited entertainment in the dark. You know, that is one reason they called it the Dark Ages.
Boom, boom.
Although the Colosseum stands as a ghost to an almost forgotten era of wealthy Caesars, rich religious ceremonies, and ancient traditions of the past, it is an engineering masterpiece that represents sheer brutality as well as a symbol to what was Rome. Before exploring the Colosseum, one must take a look at the emperors who preceded the builders. The emperors who came before them had a lot to do with the clearing of the land, making it possible to build the Colosseum where it stands today. These were some crazy characters, which is why we really need to consider the death, destruction, and mayhem they helped to foster, just so we could go for a pleasant Sunday's entertainment at the Colosseum.
Caligula, Gaius Julius Caesar, Augustus Germanicus,
more commonly known by his nickname Caligula, was the third Roman emperor, reigning until his assassination in 41. Caligula was a member of the House of Rulers, conventionally known as the Julio-Claudian dynasty. After severe illness, it was noticeable that Caligula became so overbearing in his acts of cruelty, perversion, and borderline, no actual insanity, that his own Praetorian Guard took part in his assassination. The assassination did not take place, however, before Incitatus, Caligula's favorite horse, lived the life of the emperor himself. All in all, because Caligula was such a horse's toot, he was finally done in by his Praetorian Guard, which was supposed to protect him. Ultimately, Nero, who had managed to avoid poison, knives, spears, imperial intrigue, and other hazards to young would-be emperors, became emperor.
Nero.
Nero ruled from 54 to 68, focusing much of his attention on diplomacy, trade, and increasing the cultural capital of the empire. Nero became emperor at 16, the youngest emperor until that time.
Also called Nero Claudius Caesar Drusus Germanicus.
Nero was the fifth and last Roman emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, heir to the throne. Nero was adopted by his great-uncle Claudius. As he succeeded to the throne following Claudius' death, he ordered the building of the theaters and promoted athletic games. Over the course of his reign, Nero often made rulings that pleased the lower class. The population searched for a scapegoat, and rumors held Nero responsible. In order to deflect blame from himself, Nero targeted Christians. He ordered Christians to be thrown to the dogs, while others were crucified and burned. Nero 10, Christians nothing! Popular legends claim that Nero played the fiddle at the time of a fire that destroyed Rome. One thing is for sure, even though the Colosseum was yet to be built, the fire cleared the way for Nero's lovely palace and park. Many groups of people were out to kill Nero, since he seemed to favor certain territories of his empire. In 64, Nero began singing in public in order to improve his popularity.
Oh, force divine, oh, omnivorous power,
You must be content with that.
When he realized his mistakes and perhaps how bad his singing was, hope was lost, and he committed suicide. We need not feel bad for Nero. Nero ordered the murder of his mother, Agrippina, in year 59. Nero tried to kill his mother through a planned shipwreck, which took the life of her friend, but when Agrippina survived, he had her executed and framed as a suicide. Chalk it up to heredity, and that if you have one horse's patoot in the family, you'll probably either have another one, or it may be you. In the end, both Nero and Agrippina still live on peacefully side by side, on a coin. The name Colosseum has long been believed to be taken from the colossal statue of Nero. The statue is no longer standing, and representations found today are all artist conception. Nero's head was also replaced several times with the heads of succeeding emperors. Why waste a perfectly good statue when only the head has gone bad? This remodeling of the statue was done by Vespasian. Vespasian was next in charge after Nero. It took 10 years to build the Colosseum. Titus saw to the completion of the project and opened it to the public in 80 AD. 100 days of festivities followed the opening with hunts and gladiator contests. Gladiators 3, Lions nothing! I guess you could call that karma. Domitian constructed the Hypogeum, used to house animals and slaves. Hypogeum literally means underground, from the Greek hypo, under, and Gaia, earth. Today, archaeologists are still working to uncover the ruins and mysteries that lie beneath the bloody soil. Speaking of bloody soil, there were many different kinds of contests and activities that contributed to the barbaric bloodshed. Thousands of people and animals died inside the Colosseum. As a way to mask political and social problems, emperors found that their public loved and even craved the fight-to-death displays. People were therefore admitted free of charge into the Colosseum to witness these events. One of the most popular of these types of events was that of the Gladiators. The first gladiators were prisoners of war that were slaves that had been sentenced to die. Later they became glorified slaves that traveled from town to town to compete. During the imperial period, free men could also take part. Most gladiators' lives were short-lived due to the nature of the event. However, occasionally one would gain his freedom, but this was a rare occurrence. Gladiators were considered low in social status, therefore senators were not usually allowed to fight. At first, both these types fought with very little body armor. As time went on, these gladiators became more heavily armed. The helmet was introduced, as well as long rectangular shields. The most popular type of gladiator was the retiarius, otherwise known as the net man. He did not wear armor, and his weapons were a fishing net and trident. This type of fighter would use his net to capture his victims and then stab them to death with his trident. The loss of the retiarius net would be a death sentence. Gladiators were trained in schools called ludi. The main ludi school connected to the Colosseum was called Ludus Magnus. Here the gladiators had trainers and doctors and had to undergo discipline that was very brutal. Each gladiator had to take an oath of obedience. Patronus recorded in his Satyricon the following oath.
We solemnly swear to obey the Lanista in everything, to endure burning, imprisonment, flogging, and my personal favorite, death by the sword.
Each fighter began learning with heavy wooden swords and wicker shields. They would practice against stationary objects, and then progress to fight against other gladiators. As a gladiator became well known, he would sometimes be named after a mythological hero.
Gladius Maximus. I'm Bob.
Once a gladiator was trained, he went on to compete in the gladiator games. These games usually began around midday after the trumpet sounded the arrival of the parade of the gladiators. Gladiators would then fight until someone was seriously injured or killed. If the fight was an entertaining one, the crowd or even the emperor would vote with the thumbs up or down whether the injured gladiator's life would be spared. A dead gladiator would be dragged out the gates by hooks, and his armor would be given to the victor. As gruesome as that sounds, serial executions were even worse. An armed criminal would fight against an unarmed one until someone died. Romans' appetites for these death brawls did not stop with just human. They also became excited with executions that included exotic animals. During the morning hours of a festival, one such execution was near unarmed people eaten alive by starved lions and tigers. Criminals were bound together and thrown into an arena with different types of hungry animals. The animals were kept in pens underneath the Colosseum floor, where they were starved and abused. They were then raised to the top through trapdoors when the competitions and hunts were about to begin. Thousands upon thousands of animals were killed during these events. Some accounts state that as many as 9,000 animals were killed during Titus's 100-day grand opening celebration of the Colosseum. However, as time marched on, people became bored with the spectacles. The celebrations and safaris became too expensive to run. The architecture of the building is a great engineering masterpiece of the Romans. The Colosseum is made up of material called travertine, and 300 tons of iron hold the blocks together. There are 80 main travertine piers and columns. The outer shell and up on the third row of seating is covered in marble. The floor of the Colosseum was made of wood, and sand was spread over the top. basement was a maze of animal pens and holding cells. There were 76 public entrances and 2 for the gladiators. The emperor had his own private entrance, a gigantic awning spread over the ceiling of the arena, and it took 1,000 sailors to raise it. Our own stadium seating arrangements at sporting events were modeled after the Colosseum. The Romans invented assigned seats and were the first to hand out tickets. The inside of the Colosseum is made up of a complex system of stairways and corridors, each having a Roman numeral above each entrance. Due to the structure of the arena, as many as 50,000 people could enter and be in their seats in as few as 15 minutes. There were 4 sets of steps, while the least significant people stood at the top. The lowest level was reserved for senators and people of importance. They even had their names engraved in their seats. While the Colosseum stands today as a lasting architectural marvel of the past, one should not forget the brutality and horrific events that took place within its wall. The Colosseum took freedom away from so many living things. It has weathered violent earthquakes and fires, yet still remains. One should hope that we continue to restore and preserve its walls in memory of all those that were killed, and hope that history never repeats itself.
Make a big noise playing in the street, gonna be a big man someday. You got mud on your face, you big disgrace, kicking your can all over the place.